Joining me now is writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Esther, great to have you back. Now, we've spoken several times about the idea of Meghan Markle entering into politics, and with California Senator Dianne Feinstein passing away, talk has already started that Meghan is in the running. Is that a real possibility or just a flight of fancy?
Well, it's certainly a possibility in American politics. Stranger things have happened. And obviously in America, name recognition is a very powerful tool when it does come to politics. Look, a major Democratic donor has actually come out and said that Meghan's name has been in the running for a long time. Now, the decision the decision for who the mantle will pass to following Dianne Feinstein's death is obviously going to be on Governor Gavin Newsom, and he's going to choose who's going to effectively finish out the 13 months left of her term. It's been reported that Meghan and Harry had an hour-long conversation with Governor Newsom, but he decided to go with someone else. Ultimately, we know that Meghan has always been quite politically active, even before she entered the royal family, and I could probably prescribe all her political beliefs on the back of a stamp. But the reality is, it's not far-fetched to assume that she would eye, a political career at some point in the future. Now, when in the future is actually the question here, because she still does have very young children, and she might want to focus more on raising them as opposed to entering politics. But, even Michelle Obama, who was the former First Lady of the US, she's always been thrown in the mix as a political hopeful. So someone like Meghan Markle, who holds very strong views, who's very, adamant that she wants to see more women in positions of power, that's not something that I would really be surprised if she actually chose to pursue that.
I think you're probably right there. And I think when you look at the American political landscape, it's almost like a soap opera in itself. So I think she'd probably fit in really well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's so many people that, become famous in the US for whatever reason and then end up running for office because the name recognition is so powerful. You have, from surgeons to business people to former actors and actresses. It really is a melting pot in terms of who can actually put their name in the running. And it's not something that would really surprise me, given Meghan Markle's keenness to actually influence the conversation. I don't know if you remember a few years ago during the 2020 election, that video that she and Harry released encouraging people to vote for love, which was a thinly veiled request to not vote for Donald Trump. And they ended up succeeding on that front. But the reality is, Meghan and Harry have always seen themselves as some sort of power couple, and their mission is to do good. And what better avenue to do good than to actually, influence public policy? Now, whether she'll actually get very far in that quest is a completely different story. The American public have been cooling towards the Sussexes for a while now. They've kind of gotten over the whole royal family saga. So it'll be interesting to see what she offers. I suspect it will be, a very, very feminist-driven sort of political campaign. But, we'll have to see, even if she does, to see whether she actually does even end up taking that step in the first place.
Now, a story that has been reported but won't quite go away alleges that Harry and Meghan have attempted to gag teachers and students as young as 5 from making future comments about a Sussex's visit to a school in 2021. I feel like it's very thin-skinned, and obviously if Meghan does go into politics, she won't have the luxury of gagging anyone in the public. Why would the Sussexes attempt something like this? I mean, the perception was only going to be poor, wasn't it?
I mean, this is one of those things that really highlights their need to kind of control the narrative around them. We obviously know that in the royal family, they felt like they didn't have the protection of the firm in terms of influencing the conversation about them, leaking stories to the media, as they claimed, that were unfavorable to them. So their image has been something that they've really tried to curate as accurately as possible. I have heard rumors that actually the gag order was upon a recommendation of a member of their team. So it didn't actually come from them. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's something that they went on board with. This visit that they did made to the school in Harlem in 2021. You could have children saying all sorts of things that might not be particularly favorable. They might say she didn't smell very nice, or she wasn't very polite, or whatever. And obviously, to have that swirling in the media, particularly at the time that they did conduct this visit, might not have been particularly opportune for them. So I'm not surprised that something like this will happen. But you're absolutely right. If Meghan were to enter the spotlight in a different way in the political arena, she wouldn't have the comfort or the backing of being able to gag everyone. You know, politics in the US is, or anywhere, but particularly in the US, is blood sport. People run campaigns based on a gaffe you made 20 years ago. And, you know, there's more than enough content for people that would want to put out negative press coverage about Meghan Markle. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are staff members in the royal family that won't have a lot of positive things to say about her. But I think what this really does highlight is the fact that the Sussexes are so adamant that they want to curate their own public image. And unfortunately, the more they seem to do that, the more they actually fail. Many people don't understand, but actually the royal family and their coverage of Prince Harry over the years, even from his Nazi costume to all the gaffes he's made, they really actually saved his public image, because ever since he's left and he's been completely in charge of his image alongside his wife Meghan Markle, it's completely tanked. And it just shows that sometimes actually having the protection of people you may not always agree with is a blessing more than a curse.
Hear, hear. Now, more commentary this week on the long-running furor between Harry and the royal family. While it appears that reconciliation is the best way to mitigate the risk, it appears that stubbornness still seems to be the order of the day. Where are we up to?
So there have been reports that King Charles is saying that his long-standing feud with the Sussexes is unsustainable for the monarchy. It's unsustainable for the firm's brand, because ultimately King Charles is seen as this figure of unity. He is the monarch here in Britain, and it doesn't, you know, sound very unified when you're basically estranged from your son and his wife. But the reality is, apparently the Duke of Sussex has been insisting on a personal, private apology from King Charles and William, which both are saying they're very reluctant to give. It's very unlikely that they will ever give an apology, particularly to Harry or even his wife. And the reality is, ultimately, you know, King Charles has to realize that the public understands what's going on. They're on side. Prince Harry has had, you know, many opportunities to reveal his side of the story, and every time he's done that, his opinion polls have tanked. Many people are actually sympathetic to the king, that in his old age he still has to deal with whatever, you know, fallback comes from the Sussexes moaning about their time in the royal family. I've often predicted that this feud is just going to calcify and become the status quo, and we're just going to get on with it. And I think it's actually going to create this chasm between the Sussexes and whatever they have going on and whatever aspirations they have, whether it be politics or just doing good, and the royal family that have always been about public service and will continue to be about public service and duty. So I think, you know, I understand the king's apprehensions about the sustainability of this feud, particularly what it does to the brand of the royal family, but him as a father as well, not being able to have much contact or relevant contact with his son. But ultimately, I think that's going to be the status quo, and I think the public are on side, actually, or on the royal family's side in this case.
Now, on to Archie and Lilibet, and we don't see very much of them, and that's totally fine. They're very little, and that's their parents' decision. Absolutely no criticism from me. However, Meghan may have slipped that the kids might be making their public debut soon. What's going on?
Yeah, so we've heard reports from a board member for the Invictus Games that the children could actually make an appearance next at the 2025 Invictus Games. Apparently, Meghan is very keen to teach her kids how to ski, which is a bit of a niche hobby. And she has been ruminating over the potential of getting them involved in the Invictus Games in 2025 and teaching them how to ski then, which would effectively be their first public engagement. Now, what I do find strange is the fact that Harry and Meghan insisted on giving their children titles to the royal family, even though they're both estranged from the institution and they have made very vocal criticisms of the institution. Why would you insist on giving your children the titles if you don't even want to exist in it? I found that very strange and quite opportunistic. But I'm sure in typical Sussex fashion, they will find the best moment to reveal their children to the public and obviously curate their image alongside them. I've often said, and I still maintain, that the biggest losers in this whole saga has been the children. They don't really know an entire half of their family. Meghan doesn't really have much family to speak of other than her mother. And so they're the ones that are being isolated and effectively losing out on this sort of this feud between the Sussexes and the royal family. But nonetheless, I do believe that their parents will find the opportune moment to expose them to the public that will, I suppose, benefit them and their brand as well.
Now, I've always considered the post-divorce arrangement between Fergie and Prince Andrew to be more than a little odd, but apparently it suits them both very well. I'm almost too scared to ask, but how and why is this arrangement so good for them?
The arrangement is so good for them because they've remained friends basically for the entirety of their lives. I mean, they've known each other since they were children. They started dating when they were sat together at Royal Ascot more than 30 years ago. And when they did get married initially, you know, Prince Andrew's naval career actually kept him away from home for much of the year. You know, Fergie said that for her first year of marriage, she only saw her husband for 40 days out of 365 days. So it was really, you know, the separation was quite taxing on the marriage. And she's maintained that they've always been good friends ever since. They raised their children together, and they both reside at the same residence, Royal Lodge in Windsor, and somehow they've just made it work. I mean, you know, Fergie has been a bit more vocal about the nature of their relationship and how obviously the pressures of the institution actually did keep them apart. Back in 2010, she did mention, make some murmurings about their reconciliation, but that never actually came to fruition. But she did say that, you know, if she could go back, she would have been more adamant for them to be married in the way that they wanted to be married, as opposed to in a way that suited the needs of the royal family as an institution, which is perfectly fair. You know, there've always been rumours in British media and British tabloids that they could get back together, or they're so close, it's strange. But she's always maintained that they're the happiest divorced couple in the world, and I'm tempted to agree, because I don't think I would be as amiable to my husband if I ever got divorced.
Now, it's reported this week that Prince George could actually receive a new name as king. Why is this, and is that likely to happen?
So it is unlikely to happen, but it's due to a long-standing tradition of sort of British monarchs taking on a different name, which is known as their regnal name, when they actually ascend the throne. It is a tradition that was effectively stopped by Queen Elizabeth, who didn't see the need to sort of create a fuss or further complicate matters by choosing an entirely different name. Obviously, the British royal family has become more open to the public over the last couple of centuries, really. And so you want to keep that name recognition and familiarity with the public. I think it would be a bit odd if Prince George actually chose to change his name. I mean, one of the options he could change his regnal name to would be Louis, which is his brother, which would be weird. Because most of the public wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But the reality is, it's a tradition that, you know, while long-standing, has effectively ceased to exist since the late Queen Elizabeth. So I don't think that's something that's going to materialize in the future. But it is an option, and it's, you know, it's a good piece of royal history.
Love it. Thank you so much, Esther Kraku. As always, thank you for joining us.